Welcome to the 164forever.com podcast for compulsive eaters and newcomers to 12-step food recovery. At least that's kind of what we gear this towards. We are compulsive eaters who use the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous as an instruction manual for living. My name's Carol. I'm a compulsive overeater from the Los Angeles area. And let's say hello to our fellows who are joining us today. We have Paul G.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Paul G. from California, Huntington Beach, and I'm grateful to be here.
Great. And Rebecca A.
Hiya, I'm Rebecca A., compulsive overeater. Really grateful to be here.
And Miss Nancy P.
Hey, everybody. Nancy P. from West Newton, Massachusetts, right next to Boston. So glad to be here.
There you go. Yay, Nancy P. Okay, so our last podcast, we talked about step 2. So if you're interested in hearing that or any of our other past podcasts, like step 1 and all the other topics we've had before that, just visit our YouTube channel, our Podbean channel, or just go to the website, 164forever.com. We post everything there. You can subscribe. You can leave comments. You can email us a question, whatever you like. We want to hear from you. This week, we are talking about step 3, and then we're going to continue working through all of the steps in order. So please subscribe and keep coming back. In step 1, we admitted that we were powerless, that we can't do it on our own. We can't stop compulsively eating. In step 2, we started to see that change is possible, but that we can't do it ourselves. We need the help from someone or something outside of ourselves. And that just might be able to restore us to healthy mind and body. And now we're at step 3, which is asking us to make a decision. So step 3 says that we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Rebecca, what worked for you?
Yeah, step 3 is like my favorite step because for me, that was the one where I finally realized that the way that I was doing it wasn't working. It wasn't quite working. And I had no choice but to try and work it a different way. The way I did it didn't work. I needed to do something different. And I've heard it said that's like the definition of insanity, doing something the same way over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And step 3 is like, okay, well, I'm not going to do it the same way. I'm going to do it a different way. And I'm hoping that there's going to be a different outcome. And lo and behold, there's a different outcome when we commit to doing step 3, which is a commitment to 4 through 12. I was just kind of looking up here what I had highlighted around step 3, and it's this bit. Here on page 60 in the big book, self-will can hardly, a life run on self-will could hardly be a success. And that made me think and reflect on my own life. And, it's definitely this thing where like you maybe do things on self-will the one time and it works. And you're like, right, this is exactly how I'm supposed to live the rest of my life. And then I kept on doing that. Even though it wasn't successful, it wasn't as successful as the first time. Dig a little deeper, and I looked at my life and my achievements and, things that were together on tenterhooks, it was hardly a success. So I looked further on this page, and it's like most people try to live by self-propulsion, which was me to a T. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the whole shebang. But I'm not like a ballet expert, I'm barely an expert in my own little area, let alone kind of doing other people's jobs as well. So in this step, this is where I kind of say, I'm maybe not great at trying to run everything on self-will. I need to step aside. I need to, like my friend says, disengage, actively disengage. And it's powerful when we do that, when we step aside. That's kind of how step 3 is like for me today.
Thanks, Rebecca. Paul, would you like to talk about step 3?
Yes, this is great. And all the steps, when I read them, I think, okay, this is a one and done thing. And I think for me, it's been a matter of trusting. First I came to OA trusting that there was some type of solution here. And and then I listened to people share in the meetings, and I listened to them share about the changes in their lives. And then and I trusted that what they were telling me was true. And then I trusted a sponsor, and then I trusted the big book. And then I was called to trust this higher power I call God. And I was willing to do that because what I was doing wasn't working. I've said it before on our podcast, but I made a terrible God, just a terrible, terrible God. Somewhere in my life, I thought that I was supposed to do it all myself. And I have many years of showing that I don't do it myself very well. And I trusted, I turned my will and my life over to many, many diets, supplements, food plans, gurus, and it didn't work. And so, the fact that I was asked to turn my will and my life over to God, I was willing, but I was suspect. Is this really going to work this time? And I just heard that making that decision work for people. And I think the biggest thing for me in that is that I can, if I just open the door just a little bit, if I'm just a little willing to turn my will and my life over, not knowing what that looks like, not knowing what's going to happen, that can start. And then it becomes a practice. When I slam the door shut, when I want to do things my way, when I want to exercise my self-will, when I want to be the director, which happens daily, then I can open the door back. I know that that there is a power greater than me that's there, that I can turn my will and my life over. And I don't really know what that looks like from day to day. What I know is I do certain things. I practice. I have spiritual practices. I have prayers. I listen to things. I listen to you in meetings. I listen to all of you share. I listen to my sponsors share how, one day they're just totally powerless over anything in their life. Their self-will run riot. And the next day, they're turning their will and their life over to a power greater than themselves. And it's like, did that just happen? So, I came to believe, and then I experienced it myself. So I had to believe that you believed it. And then I was willing to open the door and begin to turn my will and my life over. And it starts with being willing to work the rest of the steps. And to do the inventory, to turn it over to someone else, to start to trust God in my life. And that it didn't come all at once for me. It comes in sometimes dribs and drabs. They talk about pockets of agnosticism, things that I wasn't willing to turn over. And I keep uncovering those and discovering what's there, and then I proceed and I move on. So I think it's really a great step, and it causes me to take a look. Okay, am I really willing to move forward in this? Am I going to do this? And like Carol said a little earlier, it's like, if I'm not willing to do that, then I ain't going to get the rest of the steps. I'm not going to get the promises. So I really wanted the promises, and I really wanted a relationship with a higher power that I had felt separate and apart from my whole life. And step 3 really gave me the opportunity to say yes to God. I need your help. So I think that's it for me.
Great. Nancy P. Step 3.
Yeah, I love all the steps, and whatever one I'm currently in the middle of is the most important one, and I don't need any of the others. And so today, for right now, step 3 is the most important one, and I don't need any of the others. And I'm going to go to the book to talk about it because that's where I get most of my information. And it says being convinced. We were at step 3. What are we convinced of? Steps 1 and 2, basically, that we're powerless over food and could not manage our own lives, that probably no human power could have relieved our problem, that God could and would if he were sought. What are we convinced of? The first 2 steps, that we're all compulsive overeaters and could not manage our own lives, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, that God could and would if he were sought. If means promise, consequence, or threat to me. If you don't do it, whatever, something's going to happen. And I actually went to page 59 and looked at step 2 to make sure that I knew how exactly step 3 followed. And it says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. And the reason that's so important is because it doesn't say in, because it says, if it said in, I'd be like, holy moly, I'm screwed. There's no way, I'm so agnostic. I'm never going to get this power. But all they're saying is, to me, Nancy P, you can relax as long as you're, as long as you can see that this is the progression. So then, the very next thing, and every single time I read this with a sponsee, and every single time I read it at all, including this time, I'm on the edge of my seat. And what am I on the edge of my seat about? Just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? And I'm so interested always, because what if the answer changes? Or what if there's more information? Or what if there's a better way to do it? And so I'm always like, oh, tell me, and then luckily or unfortunately, it never actually changes. The next words are always the same too. And it says, the first requirement is that we be convinced, so that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So forget about self-will. That's what I say to myself. At this point, we're at step 3. We haven't done it. We're at step 3. So the operative word there is to be convinced. What do I want to be convinced of? That no half measures and no lurking notion. That's, to me, is the most important thing, that always, like one single cancer cell waiting to metastasize, this lurking notion that's going to come and get me. And whatever I do. So it says that we're elsewhere in the book, it says we're beaten into a state of reasonableness by the food itself. Alcohol, it says alcohol has beaten us into a state of reasonableness. So step 3 tells me that I'm beaten, it's taken everything this is basically the end of the beginning. Step 3 is the end of the beginning. I have to have these first 3 principles: powerless, unmanageable, needed a power, and if I got a power, that my problems would be solved. And it's the precursor to the, as others have said, 4 through 9, the skill set that we learn to get in touch with that power. And step 10 is sort of like an in-between step, but the real, the rubber meets the road in step 10, 11, in step 11 and 12. So that step 3 and 11 bracket, or 3 and 10, 3 and 11 bracket the skill set. And that's what we need. I mean, we can't really go any further unless we take step 3. But we can't go any further unless we take step 2. And we certainly can't get anywhere unless we take step 1. So, I'm all about that, being convinced, or knowing, forget about being convinced. I don't need to be convinced anymore. I need to be reminded, because I'm recovered. I don't eat compulsively anymore, and I don't allow my feelings to dictate what I do and say. I have feelings, as others have said. I get angry every day, or whatever. Stuff happens to me every single day, or I do things every single day that are not not like happy, joyous, and free. There's yucky, horrible, and nasty, and I don't want to be a prisoner to that. So, I know how to handle that. I know what to do about that. But this is telling me that, or reminding me, because I have been recovered for several years, that there's no lurking notion. That's more than anything else. I mean, half measures, that can be corrected, but the lurking notion is as evil and corroding as the fear is, to me, because it's this hiding in wait to do harm. That's what lurking means. When I go out to lunch with my friends, I don't lurk. I say, hi, here I am. Good to see you. Let's go get a table. I don't lurk ever. But these notions lurk. And so, I need to be, shown that I am nothing, that I have nothing to bring to the game, to the table, nothing, only my desperation and my pain. And people are talking about what did it for them. Well, I tried other things. I did too. Right here are some of the methods we tried. My methods were more meetings, fewer meetings, different meetings, eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this, eat sugar, don't eat sugar, weigh and measure, don't weigh and measure. And then, the ubiquitous get an additional sponsor, and then with and without a solemn oath, like that's going to help. The only thing I didn't do was surgery, but I thought about it. I thought about it. I can think about whatever I want. I considered it, but I was always like, no, I can't really go that far. But, I tried everything I could and nothing did it for me. You know what did it for me? Pain did it for me. When I was in enough pain, excuse me, I had to admit that I needed something. Just what do we do by that? And what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? And, I feel like an animal at a water hole in Africa. They don't come prancing out of the forest to just go lap up the water. They check and make sure there are no predators there before they do anything. And if there are predators, there's like warning birds and stuff, and they all run away. And that's kind of how I am around getting a higher power. I'm like, okay, I admit that I'm powerless over food, that my life is unmanageable. I admit that a power, I don't know what it is, and I don't really care, but there's a power, and I'm going to sneak up to the water hose. Oh my God, it has to be this. I'm running off back into the forest. But this book is so gentle and so calming that I can like take a good long drink and decide what I want. And I love that. For me, that, I'm out and proud, man. I'm agnostic and I love it. I love being agnostic, because I'm not a prisoner of anybody else's conception about what I need. I tried for decades. From 1971 to 2017, I acted as if, I faked it till I made it, or I faked it till I didn't make it. I tried, I cried, and I tried, I tried and I cried and I failed. And so step 3, the actual wording is made a decision, right? We all know this is, we don't have to do anything. We're at the water hole taking a drink and there are no predators around. Help yourself is what step 3 is telling us. And, it says, as we understood him, the last thing that I'll say about this before I let others, have a chance to talk about it is, again, in Bill's story, he takes step 3, he turns his will and his life over to the care of God as he then understood him, the implication being that his understanding will change. And that has happened to me. I haven't started suddenly like taking, I don't know, whatever they call becoming a nun or anything, whatever that is, or, going
vow
to
of chastity,
whatever, I don't know, or doing anything religious. I'm still, I'm never, I don't think ever going to go there. But, my understanding of this, I'm referring to it in my 11th step inventory at night as my buddy. Because I don't care about, I don't care about any of that, but I need to feel comfortable. So, the same way that I, sponsor very differently today than I did when I first finished the steps in elementary school, right? I learned them with my sponsor. I learned the steps there. And now I spend the rest of my life doing the steps rather than learning the steps. I sponsor very differently. My perceptions always change. The crown jewel and the whole thing is step 12. So I work with other people and it gives me a deeper understanding. It's all just the cycle of life. I'm thinking about the Lion King right now, like all the animals bowing down, like how great it is that they bow down to step 3. So, right. So anyway, so that's what step 3 means to me. Like, I understand that I'm all this disaster waiting to happen, in the process of happening, and just having happened by myself. I'm just a walking disaster in all stages of execution without step 3. So,
right. Great. Beautiful. I love it. So we have a question from the WhatsApp group. How do we know what God's will is for us?
I seek counsel from others often, because if I'm left to my own devices, I will definitely make the wrong decision. For too long. And so I never know when too long is. So that's why fellowship is so magical, because it's not that I can't make decisions on my own or take action on my own. But if there's a question, I want counsel from others. I want to make sure. And, it's not like I live a pretty pedestrian life. There's not a lot of drama in my life. But I often will ask other people who I trust, my husband for one, other people whose recovery is really good, that I respect their recovery. I ask them, and not just 10th steps. Sometimes 10th steps, but this is something. What do you think? And I know that we're going to end soon, but I just wanted to say one thing about, I turned to page 63 in the book, and it talks about we are now at step 3. And so it talks about saying the third step prayer. And there's a couple of things that I want to say about that, about this is how I, again, it's speaking to this thing about, a power greater than myself that will, I offer excuse me, I offer myself. So no bargaining. There's no question. I'm not trading. I'm offering. That I may do better, do they will take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witnesses to those I would help with their power, their love, and their way of life. So I'm offering myself, meaning I'm the problem. It's me. And it talks about how we got to get out of self. We have to get rid of the selfishness. We must, or it kills us. It talks about that. And so at the very end of the step, it says, all right, now we're going to, of course, you can't even sneeze without saying a prayer in this book. But, of course, there's another prayer to sort of mark the occasion of taking step 3. I want to bear witness. The big reveal is that I'm abandoning myself utterly to this power greater than myself, so that I will disengage. It's like a hook on a skirt. If you unhook it, then the skirt opens up. I want to disengage that hook from me and everything else. I want to be as aggressively passive as I can. That's what surrender means to me. So, and I think this third step prayer, puts the nail in the coffin in it. If you do this, and it's not one and done, as Paul said. We do it over and over and over again for the rest of our lives. I mean, it becomes a joyous, happy chore. For me, anyways, it has become that. And it doesn't take time; it makes time. I mean, my life is packed from 5:10 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. Packed with good stuff. Even the bad stuff is good stuff, because if bad things never happen to me, then how would I know how good I have it? So, that's all I have. Thanks.
That's such a good little reminder that, there is this nod to step 12, so that I may bear witness to those I would help. That's talking about step 12. And that we get well so that we can pass it on, and we can do that kind of tag team sort of relay thing. Thanks for that reminder.
Well, and I think just one last thing. I mean, that comment, Rebecca,
is.
No, it's just like what you were saying, resting on your laurels. How do if left to my own devices, I absolutely will do that. I absolutely will, because why would I not? I've had success. I've got success. The only time I bank this stuff, that I don't depend on it every single day, is if I'm out of the country. And even now, that's then. Now this is now. Like now, I have a lot of friends outside the country, so I could call them if I'm in, certainly in Europe. And I mean, that's exactly what will happen. We have to guard against that. And how do we do that? By being, doing 1 through 3, and then this is the end of the beginning. I feel like, in World War II, they said to, when the Americans entered the war, they asked Winston Churchill what he thought, if this was the beginning of the end. He said, no, but perhaps it's the end of the beginning. So it was a very momentous thing. And I feel this is too in step 3. This is the end of the beginning. Now, the rubber hits the road. And in a very gentle way, like there's nothing to be afraid of. We don't have to be afraid of any of the steps coming up at all. We don't. The hardest part for me anyways was the surrender part. That's what I was afraid of. What if like Carol, like what you said, what if there's a food that I haven't tried, or what if there's a place that I haven't gone to, or a thing that I haven't done that's harmful to me that I would want to do? Like, thankfully today, I think I don't want to do things that are harmful to myself. But, what if I wanted to? What if that plumber started looking a little too good to me? Like, what about that? So there's nothing to be afraid of. Not that I'm not plagued by fear, but that's for another step, another day.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about my self-centeredness and turning it over. I think, like Nancy said, is that, I mean, it can happen moment by moment on some days. And one of the clues for me that I'm at least open to God's will is that, if I do the work to clear off the resentments in a step 10, or my fears, and then I quiet myself, through prayer, meditation, music, whatever it is. Then I seem to be open to a message, and whether it's inspiration or intuition. But if I'm in my head ruminating about you and what you're doing wrong and how you're hurting me and what I'm afraid of and what's going to happen, there ain't no room in there for anyone else but all of my isms, I, self, and me. So the first thing for me is getting quiet and clearing the decks. And, that's what 4 through 9 and 10 do for me every day. But 11 starts the day. And it's strange that when I looked at this topic, it was a little bit hard for me to pull it apart. I really like what Nancy did. She says, I just focus on this step right here, because that has to happen for me just many times a day. And the steps are so integrated, and then we use them. Just, it's a cycle, it's a process, it's a practice, it's an experiment. I love the thought of that this is an experiment. Test God and see if he'll be found lacking. Test your higher power and see if your higher power is lacking. So that's it for me.
Great. Well, I'm sure we'll think of lots of things to say after we finish the podcast, but the great news is that we have a website, so we can write it out and post it there if we do. So please check out the website and subscribe and come back. And thank you so much for listening today. And hopefully we'll see you somewhere along the road to happy destiny.